Hey guys, someone recently requested that I make a video on how to adjust mixture screws on your carburetor. So here goes. I've always been making kind of long videos, so I'm going to try to make these videos a little bit shorter and sweeter and more easier to digest. So let's get started. First thing you need to know is where to find the mixture screws. Different carburetors have them in different places, but all 2 barrels and all 4 barrels will have 2 mixture screws. A 1 barrel carburetor will usually have 1 mixture screw. It may go in at an angle, it may be on the side, but there will usually be 1, and they're always very low on the carburetor. You can see on this Quadrajet there are 2. We are looking at the front of the carburetor. Here's 1 here, and here's 1 over here. Now, if you look at the bottom side of the carburetor, this has still got the gasket on it, but I can show you. Yeah, here's one. This carburetor is pretty dirty. It's been in storage, but that mixture screw, the other end of it, protrudes through. There's a passage behind that. You see this little tip right there? Well, right there, my finger is. That's just a. Well, how do you put it? It's just a needle and seat, what they call it basically, arrangement, and it tapers, and as you screw the mixture screw out counterclockwise, it emits more fuel into the idle air mixture circuits, where they go into this will be, this is the bottom of the carburetor, and it goes, this manifold would be here, and that's where it gets drawn into the engine. So obviously the more you run these out, the more air fuel mixture is going to be emitted into the engine, and the richer it's going to run. Go the other way, screw them in clockwise, and the taper of the mixture screw will start closing off how much air fuel gets into the engine. It starts leaning. So you know that. So what you want to do is this: you want to kind of envision that these things have a sweet spot when you're setting the idle mixture, because you start with the engine idling, warmed up, and you just take a common short flat blade screwdriver, put on these to adjust them, and this, like I said, this is with the engine running, and you start going in. Start on one side, pick a side, doesn't matter which, and just start screwing it in. As you start screwing the screw in, depending on how the adjustment was to start with, it may speed up. The engine idle speed may speed up, and then the more you go, just keep going, it'll start to slow down again. If it was already in too far to begin with, then it won't speed up, it'll just start slowing down. So anytime, any direction that you're turning this thing, that the engine does not speed up, it starts slowing down, you need to go back the other way with it, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to find a sweet spot. The sweet spot on both these mixture screws is when the idle speed is the highest. So if you screw it in too far and it slows down, go the other way. Go back out the other way, it'll speed up, and then all of a sudden it'll start to, the more you go the other way, it'll start slowing down again. So you stop and you go back to where it was idling the highest. You do one at a time. You don't have to do one a little bit and the other a little bit. You don't have to try to balance them. You're not doing that. What you're just trying to do is you're trying to get one circuit, one side of it. There's 2 circuits. Get one idling the fastest. Then when you've done that, go to the other one. Do it the same way. Go in till it slows down, go back out till it runs the fastest, start slowing down again, go back to the fastest point. That's what you want. That's how you set mixture screws. Alternatively, you can use a engine vacuum gauge and hook it to a manifold vacuum port, which is like this here. This is a fairly large one. You would try to find a small one, but this is probably one here also. You could use this one. But the engine at idle will be pulling about 15, 16, 17 inches of vacuum. So, if you have some situation where you can't hear the engine exhaust very well, you got a fan running right there in front of you, or you just want to be more precise, you can go by the vacuum gauge, because it just basically is reflecting the same thing the idle speed's doing. When the idle speed raises up, the engine vacuum raises. So you just, in that case, your object is to get the engine vacuum reading the highest. Just keep that in mind. Your whole goal with this is to get the engine manifold vacuum and the idle speed the highest. Now, what's going to happen is you may have to come over here to your idle after you're done with this. You may be idling so high at that point, it may have been so out of whack that you'll have to readjust your idle speed screw over here, your base idle speed. You may have to go down with it some. You shouldn't ever have to raise it, because you know, if it's already too low, then the only thing it's going to do is idle faster. So, well, you know, I said low, but that's because of the mixture. But that's the quick and dirty how-to on this. There's really nothing to it. Like I said, different carburetors have them in different spots, but they're always going to be very, very down low on the carburetor, on the base plate down here, because they're the last junction before that air mixture usually gets sucked into the engine. So I can tell you that quadrajets always have them on the front. A dual jet, which is just the front half of one of these quadrajets, is exactly the same. They're on the front. Those AFB, Edelbrock, Carter carburetors, they always have two right here on the front also. They're kind of angled up. A 2GC old Rochester 2-barrel, they're on the front also. They're kind of angled more. Same with the Dodge BBD, the Holly 2280s, they're all like that. Now, like I said, some of the 1-barrels have just, they all just have one, because there's only one idle circuit, but sometimes it's angled. Sometimes it may be in the center coming straight out. You'll just have to find it. There's usually no other screws except for the base idle screw that you'll find on one of these carburetors of any type normally. There always are exceptions, but that's generally the rule. Now, you will run into, on some of these later emissions carburetors, you may find that it's got a different kind of a screw. It doesn't have a slot. It may have just some kind of a strange head on it, like a hex head. And you may see that it looks like part of the housing's been carved out of it. Well, that's because it was sealed from the factory and they didn't want you to tamper with it, but somebody's already modified it so you could. And you can find a tool pretty easily to do that job. You can still adjust them the same way. So don't be traumatized by that. And very rare instances now, you may actually find that there's still a plug in there over them, that nobody's ever adjusted them. In that case, you got to take the carburetor off. You got to saw on each side of this carefully, and then take your little chisel and chisel out that aluminum plug and steel plug, whatever's in there, carefully. But mostly by now, I've hardly ever seen any kind of quadrajet that's not been, if it's a later model, that's not already been hacked out like that. So I will say one quadrajet I've got out there that I actually found that in a junkyard, and it actually, these things used to come with these kind of screws, but they had plastic limiting caps that would only let it turn so far in one direction or the other, and it actually still had them on it. I have them somewhere, and that's just about, you just about never find that anymore. So anyway, I hope that explains it pretty concisely. If you got any questions, please feel free to ask me, either this or anything else. I'll be glad to advise you on it. And don't ever look for mixture screws up here on the top of the carburetor. They're never going to be here. They're always going to be way down low at the front somewhere. So, like I said, got any questions, please feel free to ask me. Have a good one.